Good morning. This is the first QuickTime VR session, and today we're going to talk about API stuff. My name is David Palermo, and I can't see anybody out there. I'm the QuickTime VR evangelist, so if you want to be seated with new stuff to test and everything, go through me. My email is palermo@apple.com. Like I said, we're going to focus on API-specific issues today. There's another session at about 1:50 in room B that will talk about tools, third-party tools, Apple tools, web kind of stuff, and whatnot. So be sure to join that one as well. Last night, I got my new Macworld magazine. It's always nice to see another application supporting QuickTime VR. This is July. Is anyone here from Electric Cafe? Clap if you are. Okay, no one's here. Anyway, a program called Model Shop 3.0 supporting QuickTime VR 2.0. So I thought that was pretty good news. For those of you who don't have the API and would like it, it's on this CD. And every one of you should have this CD. It's also on the technology seed, which you have to request. This was April's. We started putting that on in April. It'll also be on the May CD. So anyway, I'm not going to talk too much here because I know you want to get into it. Tim Monroe is going to bring you through a bunch of steps that you can do today using the API that was released a few months ago. We will have the Windows version coming out as soon as QuickTime 3.0 for Windows comes out as well. So the stuff that you see today will be cross-platform in a couple months. Okay, Tim, would you like to take it?
Am I on? Can you hear me? Good. That's the way to say yes. I can't see out there, so when I ask a question, who does what, clap to let me know you agree. I really want to take only 50 minutes of talking. I want to leave, I fully intend to leave 10 minutes for you guys to get into some Q&A with us, to hear your feedback and get some reactions of what we're going to show you. I have 3 goals today in the next hour. The first thing I want to do is make it clear to you what the QTVR API will let you do. Now the trouble is to do that, I can't just talk about the API. I've got to do a little bit of groundwork to let you know what QuickTime VR without the API can let you do, so that then you can see what added value the API gives you. So the first thing I want to do is explain what value you get from the API that you don't get just from pure authoring. The second thing I want to do is to motivate you to use the API. I want to get you excited with the stuff we're going to show you. I want to make you want to do that in your applications. Third thing I want to do is convince you that this isn't rocket science. It's real easy to do. This is the complete API documentation. In fact, to bulk this book up, we had to stick in the file format and the information on the movie controller to get enough pages to print. So the API is extremely powerful, but it's not like the QuickTime documentation where you need 2 3-inch books to get through it. Okay, let's talk about QuickTime itself for a minute, or QuickTime VR. This is a complete lie. Things have changed. Don't believe that slide. That's not a lie. And that's pretty close. So what I'm going to do first is explain where VR, what it provides you, then talk about the API, talk about media integration with the API, and then get on to what I'd love to go to straight off, which is the demos, because I really think they're fun. Thanks, Mom. QuickTime VR is 2 technologies in one package. One technology is the imaging of panoramas. That's where you're standing at a point and you can look around you 360 degrees, hopefully. So that's what we call a panorama movie, or for short, just panorama. The other technology that VR gives you is object movies. That's where you have an object in front of you, and you can turn the object in various ways, zoom in on it, manipulate the object. So these are just two separate things that you can do with VR. A panorama is what you see in a panorama is uniquely determined by three factors. Your pan angle, that is to say your horizontal displacement in the circle, your tilt angle, your vertical displacement up and down, and your zoom factor or field of view. Those three things give you the image that you see on the screen in a panorama. An object is a little bit more complicated. It's got a pan, it's got a tilt, it's got a zoom or field of view. It also has another feature called a view center, where you can take the object and just translate it right and left. It's all my notes right here. It's compressed quite heavily. Okay, let's talk about 2.0. The current release of the VR technology is QuickTime VR 2.0. Actually, that's a lie, but I'll talk about that in a second. This was released in February. We really wanted to get it there for the January Macworld, but the testing, the quality wasn't there. We delayed it so you would have a quality, workable product. And I have to say, just from using the API extensively, it's really solid. I have yet to find a really bad bug that won't let me do what I want. It's a very solid API. I pound on it every day, and it does what I want. It's really cool. Okay, so we have panorama movies, we have object movies, and we have one other thing that I'm going to call a scene. A scene is just a bunch of movies or nodes. So each node can be either a panorama or an object. When you link them together into a navigable doohickey, you get what I want to call a scene. So a scene is what you standardly think of as a QuickTime VR file. It contains one or more nodes. Each node is either a panorama or an object. And you can mix and match. You can have objects and panoramas in a scene. Okay, a lot of what I'm doing here is just laying the groundwork, giving you some vocabulary that when I start talking about views or scenes, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay. Let's see what we have here. I won't be able to tell you everything I know today, or everything you need to know to program. For further information, you should get this book. And I say that not simply because I wrote it, but because you need it to do virtual reality programming with QuickTime VR. Also, we are going to have articles forthcoming in Mac Tech magazine, which expand a little bit on the book and actually overlap a little bit with what I'm going to talk about today. And we also have source code that is on the CD that's in the back of the book. That's a virtual CD. And we will have the same source code and additional source code up on the web and the URL indicated. Okay, I don't want to get to that yet because I need to talk more about just VR itself. Yeah, maybe I don't. What can you do with the QuickTime? Yes, I do. I'm going to back up. A panorama is really the easiest to come to grips with. A panorama is, like I said, is just a 360 or less degree view of some location in space. An object is, and that's all there is to it really. Nothing more than that. Very simple. Making a panorama, you just go out, shoot some pictures, stitch them together, do a few magic tricks, and you've got a panoramic movie. Object nodes are a little trickier in what they are. An object, really, to shoot an object movie, if you've done this, you just go out and you take shots of the object from all the possible pan and tilt angles. And then you organize those appropriately. And when you organize them, you come out logically with essentially a two-dimensional matrix. You've got your differing tilt angles this way, your differing pan angles. But just imagine you have a whole bunch of photographs of that object. Now, a cool thing that you can do with objects, imagine you just picked one of those photographs at random and replaced it with a series of photographs, possibly showing that object doing something from that particular pan and tilt angle. When you do that, and when you play the movie, you will get an animation effect, which consists of playing those different frames at that pan and tilt angle. That's what's called an animated object, or that's also called frame animation. So a given view, that is to say a given pan tilt angle, may have one or more frames that are played in order when you go to that pan and tilt angle. Now, there is no analog of frame animation with panoramas. That's why I say they're easier to get your mind around. There's one other kind of animation, or one other thing that I have to mention, which is, so we've got this two-dimensional grid of movie frames, some of which may be multiple frames, giving you frame animation. Now imagine that behind some or all of these frames, you stick some more frames, which again may be frame animated. Those are different view states of the object. So you can have several hundred view states at a given pan and tilt angle. The most popular view states for an object are button-up view states. That is to say, that's the picture or the image that is displayed when the button is up, and you also have a button-down view state, which may be different. And you've probably seen demos of clicking and you get different image when the mouse is down. We'll see an example of that later. Okay, I think that's most of the groundwork that I need to do to get into talking about the VR Manager. What can you do with the VR Manager? Well, you can play with the view angles, the pan tilt field of view, programmatically. In your program, you can say, set the pan angle to 180 degrees, and zoom, you'll go right over there. You can play with the hot spots that may exist in the panorama or the object. Now, hotspots are really one of the hidden features of VR. And one of the reasons they don't get a lot of airplay is that the VR movie controller, that is to say the current playback mechanism, does special things to only one kind of hotspots, namely link hotspots. If you click on a link hotspot, you will magically go to the node that is linked to that hotspot. Now, that isn't the only thing you can do with hotspots with the API. And I just make a plea to you content developers, the people that are going through the grunt work of taking the photographs, stitching them all together, putting in the link hotspots. Please, when you're doing that, put in lots of other hotspots, because the programmer can use those other hotspots to do cool things. The added data that's put into the file to have 10 hotspots in a node as opposed to 2 is negligible. And it's really hard to go back in and add hotspots to a movie that I get off the net or something. So please, when you're doing your link hotspots, outline lots of things in the pano or in the object, and your programmer will be very happy that you did. You can use the API to trigger hotspots programmatically, enable or disable them dynamically, lots of other things. You can use the QuickTime VR Manager to change or query characteristics of the object. For instance, If a pan tilt angle does have a frame animation, you can make that faster or slower, turn it on, turn it off, do all sorts of things with the object. You can modify the image characteristics, the quality of the image that's being displayed. You can get information about the entire scene or about a particular node. You can find out if there are any hotspots in that node. You can do all sorts of node-related things. You can tweak the memory usage if need be. You can request, for instance, that the entire panoramic image be read into memory if that's crucial to you. And the last thing, and I think the most important feature that the VR API or the QuickTime VR Manager gives you is the ability to hook into its operations at selected times. I use these hooks all the time, and they're just great. So what are your hooks? You can have mouse over hotspot procedures. So, for instance, when I move the mouse over a hotspot, you could have a procedure get called at that time. What you do in that procedure is up to you. You could do some cool things. You could play a sound. You could run a video. And this thing is actually quite smart. You can configure it so that your procedure is called only when the mouse is first moved onto that hotspot. Or you could be called for as long as the mouse is over that hotspot. Or you could be called only when the mouse leaves the hotspot. So there's a lot of functionality here that you can play off of. Another important hook are the node entering and node leaving procedures. When I go from node A to node B, I could have something happen as part of that transition from node to node. And the node entering and leaving, you're thinking, why not, could you roll those into one? You can do different things depending on whether you're entering the node or leaving it. One important feature of the node leaving procedure is you can say, no, I'm not leaving this node. You can cancel the user's request to go to node B. Not very nice, perhaps, but there would be cases in which that would be a cool thing to do. You can draw into the back buffer. I'll explain that in a second. Okay, let's back up. Remember I said panoramas, you go take some pictures, you run them through some magic software, and you get this usually long horizontal picture that looks funny because it's warped. It's warped because that's what the VR movie controller needs in order to take that data and display it correctly on the screen. That image that you get as the output of your authoring process is stored in the file. What they do is you go in and you slice it up into some pieces, and you take those pieces and store them in a video track in the VR movie file. Now, you may not need all of those pieces at any one time, so the VR controller goes out to the file, brings in the pieces that it needs into what's called the back buffer. So the back buffer is all or part of that warped source image of the panorama. Now you can, if you want, draw into the back buffer. You can have a callback procedure that the controller will call you and say, yo, I've just got some back buffer. Would you like to do anything at this time? You can draw into there. There's a couple of gotchas that I'll talk about in a few minutes for doing that, but that may be something that you want to do. Now, once the back buffer is finished, that image, which is warped, gets corrected so that it can be displayed on the user's screen. Before that happens, typically, the corrected image, the one that looks right, is copied into a buffer called the pre-screen buffer. If you want, at that time, you can draw into the pre-screen buffer. Now, the basic difference, this isn't entirely correct, but the basic difference is if you want to draw something into the movie that depends on the current pan tilt angles and needs to be perspectively correct, then you should draw into the back buffer. If you want to overlay something like a heads-up display or a logo in the corner, something that doesn't depend on the pan, tilt, or zoom settings of the view, then you'll draw into the pre-screen buffer. That's not entirely correct, and I'm going to come back to that issue in a second to make it fully correct. The final hook that is worth noting are intercept procedures. If you don't like the way QuickTime VR does something, you can intercept a call and change it or even cancel it. For instance, you might want to do something special every time the pan angle changes. That's one of the functions that we allow you to intercept. And so when the pan angle changes, you get called, you can do some work, and then let VR do its thing. Now, my job in the VR team so far has been to write sample code to play with the API. One of the things I did was pick the low-hanging fruit. That is to say, I went out, looked at the QuickTime media layer and said, this stuff is cool. I like sounds. I like pictures. I like QuickTime movies. What else have we got up there? I love 3D. Let's put that stuff into a VR scene. Let's put it into a panorama node. Let's put it into an object node. Let's bring these movies alive. So let's take all this wonderful multimedia content and make it usable within the VR sphere of operations. So these were the things that I looked at first. Like I say, these are the obvious things that you'd want to play with. And I will talk about the first four of those. The last two, actually speech recognition was the first little sample I wrote. It seemed to me just too cool, or too boring actually, to have to manipulate this thing with the mouse. So I went in and used the speech recognition manager to let you give it directions, like let's pan 90 degrees left. And it worked like a charm. It's really cool. I won't demo that here today, but the source code for that app is in the book or on the web. And another medium is time. You may want to do some things in your panorama after a certain amount of time has elapsed. So that's another medium that we can integrate into our VR world. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I went about integrating these various features, and I will get to a demo, I promise you. Sounds are easy to overlook, but they add so much to the virtual experience that we can provide. Here I've just sort of categorized some of the things I wanted to achieve when I started working. I definitely wanted ambient sounds. If I'm in traffic, I want to hear traffic. If I'm inside a museum, I want to hear footsteps clopping away. Okay? So those ambient sounds. I want localized sounds. If I've got a faucet and it's dripping, I want to hear it louder when I turn to that faucet, and I want it to be softer when I turn away. Now, localized sounds was a no-brainer, and I have the brains to make that decision. I'm going to use sound sprockets. So I went in very easily, hooked sound sprockets up to VR, and got localized sounds. Now, I didn't go to the Game Sprocket session the other day. What is the word on sprockets? Is it going to be cross-platform? Did anybody go? What did they say?
I don't know. I think it's a Mac thing.
Okay, that's the trouble. It's a Mac thing, and worse yet, it's a PowerPC thing. Okay, you can't run sound sprockets on a 68K. For a while that didn't bother me, and then it started to bother me. So I said, look, I don't need all of sound sprockets to get localized sound. I know the sound manager. I can use its volume command to pan right and left and do the right thing. So that's what Sound Sprocket is. It's my mini version of sound sprockets that is perfectly good for VR uses. Another thing, container you may find your sounds in, you may want to play QuickTime soundtracks or QuickTime MIDI files. And it was surprisingly easy to integrate those into a VR shell. Sounds, as I've discovered, I haven't really prototyped this a lot, sounds are almost free. They don't take any CPU overhead. When I get to the demo, I'm going to have 4 or 5 sounds going at once, along with lots of other stuff, and it's just for free. So go out there and add some noise to your panoramas. Pictures and movies. Okay, VR is cool, but it's too static. And once you've gone and authored it and put together the whole file, it's hard to change. So there's really a couple of ways that I have integrated pictures and movies, really it's the same thing, into a VR panorama. The first thing is to draw into the back buffer. Okay, now if you do that, remember I said that the back buffer, the data in there is warped. It needs to be warped because it's a cylindrical projection, and I don't know all the math. But I do know that if I just go in and my back buffer proc and draw a square, when that makes it to the screen, it doesn't look like a square. It's sort of like a pregnant square. It's got sort of bowed out. Well, that may be okay for you, and if that's what you want, then draw squares in the back buffer and you'll get pregnant squares on the screen. So you may need to warp the image yourself if you want it to look right on the screen. And the algorithm to do that, I believe, is available. It's very simple. However, you might not need to do that. I'm going to show you at least 3 movies that are accomplished by drawing into the back buffer that I didn't do any warping to, and if I hadn't told you that, you wouldn't be able to tell. Now you're going to say, oh yeah, it looks funny to me, but no, it doesn't look funny to you. So you probably don't need to warp it before you draw into the back buffer. The other thing you might need to do, actually today you do need to do, is the back buffer, by accident really, is you got that image, they did that to it. It's rotated. So if you want to draw some text, you need to rotate it and then draw it. It's not a big step. It's not a big problem. In fact, I have a couple movies that I didn't even bother to rotate, and you won't be able to tell. Okay, that is a really good way to get movies or pictures into your VR content. Another way, and this has advantages at times, is to texture map the movie or the video onto a 3D object that you're embedding into the node. This has advantage. I won't go into them now. If you want to talk about it later, we can. I do have some examples in the demo of where the video is achieved by texture mapping onto a 3D object. Oh, good, 3D objects. How did I get 3D objects? Why did I want to get 3D objects into my scene? Well, again, going out and photographing what's there is fine. You may want to add stuff to it. You may want to add objects that look 3D. So one way you can do those is to use a 3D package, such as QuickDraw 3D, and then put that into your scene. And because, of course, you can move the object around if you want, you can then get a 3D object in your scene that changes location or does all sorts of other things. What's the basic idea there? Again, it was hideously simple to do this. You'll see. The idea is that when the QuickTime VR view angles, that is to say pan, tilt, and zoom, change, you change your QuickDraw 3D camera settings. You then render the image into a draw context. You then copy what's in that draw context into the pre-screen buffer. Why? If you copy it into the back buffer, bad things happen because it will be prospectively corrected again, and you don't want that. So you draw them into the pre-screen buffer, and you're done. You now have a 3D object, could be, say, a 3DMF model that you've read in your panorama. Now, you might be asking, and this is a good question, why didn't I just render the darn thing into the pre-screen buffer? Why do I need the extra copy bit step? Very simple. QuickDraw 3D nowadays erases the draw context before you draw into it. And if you are drawing into the pre-screen buffer and you erase that buffer, you are out of luck because your panorama is gone. Your 3D objects are there, but your panorama is gone. So currently you need the extra step of drawing to a buffer and then copying to the pre-screen buffer. Isn't hard. There is a performance penalty, but that's life. Finally, the last thing you need to do is a little bit of housekeeping. If the user resizes the window, you need to resize your draw context. All right. Applause are much appreciated. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's get the demo machine up here. Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to do this demo in 2 steps. I'm not going to show you the good stuff first. Why? Because you would take it for granted if I did that. You wouldn't respect me in the morning. What I need to do is give you a before and an after look at what I've done, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is walk you through a scene the way it is now, and then I'm going to close it, open it again, and walk you through it in a little bit nicer manner. One thing that I get for free here is there actually are some really cool things you can do just from an authoring point of view. And we'll see a couple of those. So what I'm about to launch is what's called WWDC Demo. This is the exact file that is on the QuickTime 2.0 Authoring Tools Suite CD with one change made, which goes back to hotspots. I had to go in and add some hotspots so that I could get some cool behaviors when I clicked those hotspots. But aside from that, this is exactly the scene, the file that is available on the CD in the book. I haven't done anything else. Now notice I just went in, I double-clicked the file, and what application did I get? I got Movie Player. Wonderful. All right, so here I am. We are in San Francisco, outside a photographer's studio. Okay? Sure is quiet out here on the street. Okay, now here's something cool. Okay, don't close your eyes. I'm going to click on this door. You can see that when over the door I get a little arrow showing that there's a hotspot there. I can come down here and actually show the hotspots. There, the original file had only one hotspot, the door itself. I've gone in and added hotspots. I'll just twirl around here. You can see that I've added some hotspots there in the scene that we'll use later. Okay, so let's hide the hotspots. Now watch what happens when I click the door. It opened. I got dynamic behavior without using the API. How did that happen? What you saw first was a panorama. You saw me spin around. When I clicked the door, I went to an object node that's an animated object node, and the frame animation consisted of the door opening. So right now we're looking at an object node. We are not in a panorama anymore. I'll prove it to you. I can't pan around. No matter how hard I try, I'm stuck on this view. Oh darn. Okay, notice, can you read that out there? It says click on doorway to enter. So I clicked on the doorway, it opened up, and now I have to click on it again to enter. Let's do that. And now we're inside the studio in a little reception area. Now let me turn back around here. There's the door, it's open, there's the outside that we just saw. And when I came in, I wasn't looking straight ahead like that, I was looking off like that. I find that kind of disorienting. When I go in a door, I don't go in like this. I go in straight and I expect to see what's straight ahead of me. So I'm going to fix that I don't want to say problem. I'm not dissing the file format. I'm going to enhance the user experience going in that door. Let me show you one. I shouldn't do this, but I will. If I go back out the door, I'm in my panorama again, okay? So here's what happened. I'm in node 1. I go to the object node, which actually is number 49, for those who are interested. Then when I click the door, I go to node 2. From node 2, clicking the door, I go back to node 1. So I've skipped the object node in between. The only reason that object node is there is to give you that wonderful experience of the door opening. Let me show you a quirk, though. So I'll come back here. I'll open the door. I'll go inside. Now, you see this little arrow button right down here? It says back. That takes me to the previous node. Where's it going to take me? 49. Bingo. Whoops. Ah, there it is, the object node. Okay? That's the way it should do it, because you told me to go back to the previous node, and I went back to the previous node. A better experience would be to go back to node 1. That's the kind of thing you could use the API to fix up. All right, let's go inside. Here I'm in the hallway. Now I'm in a reception panel. I can look around. There's a staircase going up, and there's some more stuff over here. Let's go up first. Now we'll look around up here. We're in a room. It's got a toilet. Okay, we could do some fun things with that. And, oh, there's a TV set. Let's zoom in on that. It looks like some people. Let's click there. And there, all around us, is a panorama of the QuickTime VR team at the time that was taken. Now notice this. Let's look at the hotspots. Everybody's head is a hotspot. If I move the mouse over people's heads, what do I get? I get their name. The default behavior of the QuickTime VR movie controller is to display the name of the hotspot in that little text field. So to get this behavior, all you have to do is name your hotspots correctly. So we can move around, look at the wonderful team. There's only one problem with this node, and that is I'm not in it. I didn't make it to the picture that day. There's a problem that could be solved. Okay, let's go back out. This is going to take us back to that room. Now, did you notice that? Let's do that again. I went in, I looked at my TV, I clicked, and I'm looking at my TV. How many people crawl out of their TVs backwards? I crawl out of my TV frontwards. So this is where I should be looking, over there. That's what I want to see. Okay, I'm getting angry here. This is really... What? 5 minutes. For what? Q&A. You're kidding. Okay, then let's quit this. Geez, I didn't know it was taking so long. All right, let's fire this up. I may have to bag the Q&A because you don't want to miss this. But there is a feedback form later. Okay, this is an application that I wrote that its only job in life is to integrate media into VR movies. It's going to take a second to load. I apologize. It hasn't crashed. There we are. Let's just hide the desktop. Hey, some ambient sound. Okay, it's a windy day in San Francisco. Oh yeah, there's a car alarm. If you get over here at the wrong pan angle, you set off a car alarm. People across the street are playing some music. The music is directional. If I say, I don't like that music, all I got to do is turn my back on it, and it goes away. Or I can come back, turn it off. I don't know about you, but I have never seen a graffiti-less city. I click there. Here is video in the panorama. This is a QuickTime movie being drawn into the back buffer. Does the warping matter? No. You can't tell that that's not pre-warp. It is rotated, okay? And QTVR rules, and what does it say? Fluffy was here, okay? All right, now notice I can't get in the door. There's no hotspot there now. I've got to be polite and ring the doorbell. Now I can go in the door. All right, creaky door. I go in, I'm looking straight ahead now. Oh, and I turn nicely. Okay, thank you very much. go up to the room. There's our TV. Hey, what happened to the team picture? Let's zoom in. Oh, we got some video. Okay, that's cool. Again, directional sound. If I turn away, I don't hear it. If I bring it back, whoa, I hear it. Let's click the channel. Okay, let's change channels. Let's change channels. Oh, there's what we want. Let's go in. Thank you. We have an overlay logo, pre-screen buffer stuff. We still have the names, but...
Hi, this is Matt Schaefer.
Hi, I'm Richard Mandra. I'm from Christ.
Mouse over. I'm just moving the mouse over, and I'm getting digitized sound. This is a segment I call the Deadheads. They don't do anything here.
Here's Fluffy.
And finally, there's somebody looking down on the team from that window up there. The right person. Okay, let's get out of here. Okay, now I did not come out of the TV set backwards this time. Got to do that. Come back down. You should know that I like model trains. We'll go to the next one. This is my holographic model train. Let's zoom in on that, get a good look at how that's working. Again, this is straight drawing the QuickTime movie into the back buffer. And this is a computer-controlled train. If I click here, it stops. If I click again, it goes. Every train's got a whistle. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't show you before because I was talking too much was this great stereo. Now, just pure authoring, they had the ability to change the sound. But if you've ever played with this, you know that the sound was choppy as you moved from volume level to volume level because it had to stop and start again at the new volume level. Here I've got total smoothness with my own sound. Hey, that's cool. Let's add a little pan and tilt here. Got my own balance control. Okay. I forgot to tell you, San Francisco is a seismically active area. Anything could happen. That looks much better at a smaller size because I'm just changing pan and tilt angles. This thing was actually up on the shelf, but it fell down. I'm going to put it back up there. And I got to hurry. Boy, I could show you a lot of stuff here, but it's time to go to Mars. Just 1 second.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That whole transition was just a QuickTime movie. I went in, took a snapshot of before, took a snapshot of after, did some work. Actually, I didn't do it, but somebody did some work in Adobe something or other, did the nice crossfade, and we get that nice. I got to do that again. That's too much fun. Okay, let's go back. Did I hit back? Let's go in the door again. And we're on Mars. And we get to hear Neil.
It's one small step
Everybody
for
knows
man,
Neil was an Ohioan. Is that right?
giant leap for mankind.
Do we have any Buckeyes in the audience? All right. Okay, now that before, I didn't get this far, but that Earth wasn't there before, I guarantee you. Now that is just a QuickDraw 3D object with your little world map from the scrapbook texture mapped onto it. That's why we'll see in a second the international date line is very prominent because those are the edges of that picture. Hold on a second. Do I need to? Here we go. See that international date line? You thought it was just imaginary. Okay, let's come back out here. We're just about done. Now again, I went in, added some hotspots. I'll show you where they are. Uh-huh. Okay. You know what I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking. Sorry, guys.
Houston, we have a problem.
Okay, let me turn off my heads-up display. This is the last effect you're going to see. There you saw it. We saw a QuickTime video. We saw sound. We saw 3D objects. Hey, a MIDI track. What fun. And here comes the dancing logo. That's what I've got to show today. And let's just see if it's, what is that? Is that a 3D object? Yes! There you got it, QuickTime Media Layer all in one package. 3D, VR, video, sound, you name it, we got it. Okay, let's quit that. Do we have any time left for Q&A? I apologize. Okay, let's do it. Any questions? Let me bring up the engineering team. We have Ken Doyle, John Murata, is he here? And Bryce Wolfson are the main people to blame for this fun. And let's get some questions. John is not here? Oh, here he comes. Okay, let's start over here. You're there first.
Hi, Lauren Paradin from Vidonics. Do you have any hooks for hardware acceleration?
Not yet. Is this thing working?
Yep.
Okay. Not yet. We don't. That's something we're looking at in the future, but for 2.0, hardware acceleration isn't there yet, but it's definitely on our minds.
Thanks.
Okay, over here.
You've mentioned a number of times that Windows API won't be out until QuickTime 3.0 comes out.
That's
when
correct.
QuickTime 3.0 comes out, it'll still use the QuickTime VR 2.0, same API calls?
The API will be the same, where there are some slight updates between the 2.0 release and the release we'll have when QuickTime VR for Windows comes out, but it'll essentially be the same.
And there should be some performance enhancements, I think, by that time.
So we can use the QuickTime 2.0 API for Windows now to start planning?
Yes.
Okay.
Over here.
Any chance of having stereo perspective views possible?
Bryce?
We've done some work with that. I know that you're talking about stereo panoramas.
Right.
Kaidan, I believe, now sells a capture rig for that, and of course you can render it. And we've done some work. I can't necessarily say anything about built-in support, but we've certainly done some work, and I know you can do it with the API because that's all we've used to do it, to play back those, combining them at runtime for whatever kind of a viewing device that you have available to you. You should see that as sample code sometime in not real distant future.
Great, thanks. Great work for the whole team. Nice work.
Over here.
Oh, I thought he had a question.
I'm sorry, I forgot over there. Yes.
No, I'm over here. I was following through that most cool demo, and I knew what was going on all the time, except with the train. Now, when you're overlaying a QuickTime movie, are you doing like a background transparent mode, or did you cut out the part of the QuickTime and then do your compositing yourself?
I use brain dead method because that's all I know. It's just a straight chroma key dropout. The background of that video is black, and I've just told CopyBits to forget black. You could go in and do an alpha channel or something, anti-aliasing, but it looked good to me.
No, I'm wondering, like I haven't managed to get the layering or the graphics modes to work in the overlay movies yet.
I didn't do anything special. I don't know how to do anything special. I mean, right. Go ahead.
Are you referring to how you have tracks with different layers in a QuickTime movie?
In a QuickTime movie, yeah.
All the data that I added was external to the application. It was I'm going out and opening a .mov file at that time.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Does the .mov file have a background in it?
It's black. The background is black.
Oh, so the transparent, it's working. Like
yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, great. So it's just something I'm doing wrong.
I think we're in the middle.
How do we get this stuff into the game sprocket back buffers? That the frames of your VR movies?
I don't know. I mean,
I think we'll have to punt on that one. We're not real familiar with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Fluffy. Over here.
When will QuickTime VR be moving from a cylindrical projection of panoramas into a spherical projection?
That's another important future direction. We're actually looking at several different kinds of looking to panoramas where you can look all the way up and all the way down, and that's definitely on our plate for the future.
Very important for the 3D packages.
Yes, I understand. I agree.
Over here.
You've now got API access to the pre-warping back buffer. Is there API access to the hotspot channel to do live hotspots?
That is not in 2.0, but it's a very important issue that's been brought up before, and it's definitely something we plan to do. It would not be very difficult to do, and I would imagine in the next release or two you'll definitely see that.
I think we're over here.
Yep. Just wondering if you're leaving things like compositing, your 3D graphics and movies and that sort of thing in the VR scenes up to third parties like Panimation with their nodes to program and so on, or are you going to be producing utilities that allow that sort of thing, the end user to put those things together nicely?
Well, there's going to be a tool session coming up later on. I don't think, beyond what you'll see at the next session, I think a lot of these things are what we would call third-party opportunities.
Cool.
No other questions. Let me just say that if you want that demo, most of the source code for that demo will be up on the net. There's nothing really proprietary in there. I am going to chop out the parser segment of that reads the script file that I wrote, just because I don't want that script file to be any kind of standard. But everything you saw here today, within about a week, you should be able to do yourself. There's no rocket science.
They could do it now if they started from scratch. But
yeah, they could do. Yeah, okay.
Everything that he showed is work you can do in 2.0. In fact,
and it's all off-the-shelf APIs. There's no vaporware here. Okay, is that it?
All right. Thank you very much.